Roger once again, Mud Fossil University, going to the deep end of the pool today, which is in the deep end of the electron pool, which is all the way down to the fundamental particles, is what I can see here. Now, you may see something else, but I will show you the light research that we did a couple of years ago, and I've filtered through everything, and I think I understand what's going on now. Alright, so I believe these are the fundamental particles. Now, let's go a little deeper, and then if you stick with me, I think you'll see that there's a lot of evidence here. Now, this is a completely new theory, and it's based on what you're going to see. Now, this is a red laser light, which these are the pulses of the red laser. These are actually, at the very center is where the particle is, really, the particle beam. And this is really interference with the atmosphere that is smashing through, which is ether. And these particles that you see illuminated here, those are ether particles. This is like a restriction to this magnetic particle, and it is forcing itself through this ocean of particles, which are ether. Alright, I'll explain about these pictures at the end of this, and you can take them yourself. It's very simple to do. Credit goes to Rodney Warren. He came up with the way this works. And I will explain everything in detail at the end. It's very simple to do. All you need is a construction laser, cheap one, and a cell phone. All right. So let's just continue on with this. Now, what Rod did. Now, let me just put it this way. Rod did all these pictures. I worked with him for well over a year, every single day. And, I did the same things here, but his pictures were just outstanding, as you will see. So these are all Rod's pictures. Now, this was that disc that we just saw a minute ago. But what you see now is an extremely compressed disc, and that is that filament of particles that I said is the center. And it is now becoming crushed into what is a Venturi here. I'll explain all these things as we go forward. But it creates an extreme restriction on the particles, and they have to interfere with each other and go into each other's regions. That's why you see all those white little particles. All right. Now, once they pass through the restriction, they splay out like crazy to get away from each other, because they are literally crushed into each other's regions, and every one of those wants a certain region around it that it owns, and nobody's allowed in there. And these guys now are all touching each other, and they just hate it, and they come out of here just in extreme chaos, and they will step down, and in that process they display what's called a Higgs field. And that Higgs field surrounds a charged tiny filament, which is the charged particle carrier. It carries the field. Now let's go look at that. Okay, I have other pictures to show that light literally spins out of here. And these filaments are what they call a boson particle charge carrier. And at the head of the charge carrier, which is a charged particle, which is a negative electron, is my statement. And at the head of that is a field that is normally not this pronounced. These are stepping down from being accelerated. Going through that Venturi accelerates them like crazy. This is what's called Cherenkov white radiation. That has become totally energetic, because everybody is in each other's regions, and that creates a literal electronic explosion. And the particles given off are these particles, and the head of each particle is like a hammer fist. It's just like coming out of here, a particle, and at the head of it is wrapped around with one of these discs, and those discs display the Fibonacci pattern, because every polarized particle pushes each other exactly a distance away, and that's what creates the rings, and that's what creates the polarized little dots. And that is only possible because there's ether in the atmosphere. The particle is so central here, and this is simply a manifested ether, a magnetic field. And the only reason it's so pronounced is because this is so energetic. As these come out, they sort of slow down and they just sort of make into those little wavy patterns, which you don't really see much. All right, so that is the case here. Now, there's also a story of leptons, different color ranges, and they go, lilac is the primary color. Now, you see these different discs, and you see there's a different density to them. This one's much denser. It's into the violet range, which is normally a higher frequency. The lower frequencies create larger discs. Now, this one here is an extremely energetic particle. Now, there's a right-hand rule and a left-hand rule. And the right-hand rule is electricity. And I believe that these all display identical patterns to the right-hand rule of electricity. And that, I think, is backwards. That's the only reason I can come up with to say that that is so energetic, but it doesn't have any field. Why doesn't it have a field? Why doesn't it have a field like all the rest of them? I know these are all particles too. That's a particle, I can tell you, and I'm going to show you what happens to it. Because something does happen to it. And that one is going to blow your mind. But this is my point. Think about this. Walter Russell showed how different spinning creates drag and so forth. You have to look into his work. But one direction does one thing and the other direction does another thing. So let's say that that's going the wrong direction. That's the only thing I can say. And I'm going to show you something else in a minute too. Now that is that little blurby white one that came through here. Now it has no field. It has no field that I can see. However, watch this. It smashes into this field. And as it does, it steps down to its own field. I'm seeing a new field being created here. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I'm seeing. The architecture of this just shows it's turning into this. But it's dumped off a little light trumpet. I'm calling this a little tiny light trumpet. Now, I want to show you something else because I was in contact with a guy a couple of years ago, and I can't find him anymore. He came up with the Trion ray, and I'll show you that in a second. I'll try to explain it. Okay, this is on YouTube, an artist, and it's Walter Russell, The Secret of Light. Now, somebody just sent me this the other day. I had no clue about his work, and then I see this, and I said, wow, this really makes sense to what I've been doing. This is the spinning of the light. When it spins, not only does it spin going forward, it's polarized light, so it's going to be pulsing. They're polarized particles spinning. So those polarized particles are going to be setting up sideways waves. This guy has it exactly correct. Sideways wave, sideways wave. They're going to be pushing itself outwards. Now, it's forcing itself through the atmosphere, first of all, because there's electrons out, static. Electricity is electrons. They move from things onto you. They're electrons. That's all it is. Now, they are going to be in front of this thing as it's trying to force its way through, because this is an electron. That is a particle. And it's twisting its way through the atmosphere, and as it does, it creates magnetic fields, and they spin, so they create more and more and more of these sideways waves. And that polarizes the ether surrounding it. Right, this is virtually identical to what Walter Russell was saying, as far as I can see. It appears to have started to spin in here, and then it goes out and around and around and around, and it follows. So what is really happening in the center? This is the slit. This is literally the particle. We're seeing it come through here, and that is like the shock wave left as that particle cascades through space. Now, we can see all the little polarized dots. It's the same architecture, same deal. And I believe if I back out of here, we'll see that, yeah, you see the same polarized ether all around it. This is what happens. Now, let's go to chalkboard and think about what's happening as that electron spins. If it's an electron, which I say it is, and I'm sure it is, as it spins, it's a negative particle. And it's trying to push away the next things away and away. So it's just sweeping away from itself. Forget the chalkboard. We don't need it. It's obvious. Now, the reason that galaxies have these arms that sway like this, because they are in this ether. Everything is in the ether. Every single thing there is. The galaxies are spinning because Walter Russell, and I agree with him, says that everything spins. I agree with that. When it spins, it's dragged through this ether, through this ocean of negative particles, which don't interact with each other. As you saw, John Glenn, they say 7 to 8 feet apart. They have a literal size, it looks like, and as this sweeps through it, the electrons push against it, because every single thing there is has electrons coating it. All right? Every bit of matter is completely coated with electrons. Internally, they have the positives, but externally, they all have negatives. 100% of everything on the outside is negative. 100%. And space in the vacuum is loaded with negatives. That is their place of that's where they come from. They're all loaded in there because everything that illuminates sends them out there. They float around until they get to somewhere where it wants to attract it with an extreme positive, which I showed with the, well, I'll show it again. I believe this is glass, and the beam is coming straight through here, creating this bulge. Normally you don't see that in the air. You just see a shock wave coming forward. But I think this is pushing so hard through glass that it's creating its own looking bowl, roundness going forward. Because I'll show you, a normal beam does not have that raised architecture. You can clearly see the difference. There is no bulge there. It's just spewing its forwardness and exciting everything that's in its path, and then that continues to spread itself as excitation, illuminating the ether, which is everywhere. And the ether is the static electricity. Now, that is electrons, and those electrons come from the sun. They're light. On the way to Earth, they're still electrons. There's still electrons. There's static electricity in the air, in the vacuum of space, hurled towards us at different speeds, different frequencies, but dark because they're in the vacuum of space. Nothing to collide with. They separate each other out. John Glenn says 7 to 8 feet apart, and I'll show you the details on that. Maybe I have already. And something I want to mention is people are, oh, you say the same things over and over. Well, maybe I do. I'm not going to give you any refunds. It's hard to get a refund when it's all free. Now, but I do these things. Here's how I do my research. I see something, I got to document it. When I document it, later I pick it up and maybe I'll go back through it, or I'll just throw it in there. So sometimes there's going to be a lot of stuff over and over and over because things evolve. You know, not humans, but intelligence evolves. You know, the rest of the evolution is nonsense. All right, so let's go forward. All right, this is looking straight down over the slit, and it's coming out as just absolute chaos, plasma, whatever you want to call it. Every little particle is in everybody else's place. They shouldn't be. They're all pushing each other. They're shoving. They're fighting. They're coming out of here in absolute panic and chaos. Poof, they come out of here, and then they say, whoa, finally we're out of this restriction. We can slow down. And they start to smash into the atmosphere here, creating these waves and starting to step down in energy levels, and that's why they're going from white to yellow to red and so forth. Now, some of them are a little stronger than others of them. They're crossing each other's paths at this point, but they will start to come totally separate. Now, in this interim between here and as they separate, there's a range in here where they step down, and that we see something very unusual. All right, this right here was where the accelerator was issuing out all of its particles. Now, at this point you can see that they are just in panic. And then they start to separate out. And then they step down to this. It's a few waves out. You see these particles up here, these two particles. And it only happens, it looks like, for 2 waves to me. Then they turn into a different pattern of the black and then the white and then the black. Over here it's the white and the black and the white. It's like rolling itself down in energy. That's all I can say. Now, I do have a theory that this is a torus, and its neck is the choke, and the choke is the reverse EMF component that creates a choke. It opposes the incoming current at up to 10 times, even maybe more, I don't know, because of the cylindrical nature of the choke. It reverses it into the capacity of the torus body and goes back into the other side of the choke where it also pulses backwards. That's all I can come up with at this point. Now, let's go on from there. It's called capacitive, inductive and capacitive reactance. They react. A capacitor sucks up electricity. Just take it in. Come on, bring all you got. I'm not going to stop you. It comes in. A choke, on the other hand, is a restriction, and that's the neck of the torus. It's called an inductor, whatever you want to call it. I call it choke coils. And that will restrict the flow, and when it restricts it, it pushes back against the magnetic fields, and they expand. And then when you cut it off, poof, they dump backwards, up, well, at least 10 times the applied voltage in most cases. Okay, this is the way light travels. It spins in a circle. It doesn't wave like this. It spins. And that's why when they come over the top and it goes through coming at the top of the slit, it ends up coming, this is like downrange from the slit, okay? So the slit is way back here. The spinning light goes through it, and if it comes through at the top of the slit, it ends up going over here. If it comes through at the bottom of the slit, it ends up going over this way. Simple as that. And most of it goes through the center. If a machinist looked at that, he'd say that's a drill bit tip. All right, so that's how light works. And here, really, this is what it is. That's the tip of, well, that would be the light particle. And as it moves, long waves are not energetic. They just sort of ramble along. Short ones, because they're going, you know, a similar distance at the same time. If this one is spinning much faster than this one, the impact when it hits something is much greater because the spin gives it what's called angular momentum. The other one just has basically forward momentum. So it's a process of calculating between the angular momentum, the forward momentum, and the base unit of the resting mass of the particle that's moving, which is an electron. Like I say, it's approximately 0.00055 atomic mass units, something like that. If that's correct, I don't know. But whatever it is, you have to take those factors into account: angular, forward momentum, and then the pushback of the medium it's going through, because the more electrons, the more pushback. So, I mean, there's a bunch of little things. A little bean counter can do that. They can figure out how it moves and what the forces are and come up with a whole bunch of little equations. But it's basic, very simple. It's energy equals mass. Really, that's it. But there is no speed of light, so don't, that's silly. C squared, forget that. And mass, everything has mass, so there is nothing that does not have mass. Anything that doesn't have mass is nothing, so it's nothing. That's just nothing is nothing, and nothing does nothing, so nothing is nothing. And there is nothing that is something. There's no photon that is something. A photon is nothing, which means it just doesn't exist. Neither do neutrons. Neutrons don't exist because the nuclear particles are protons of positiveness. They get flooded with little electrons of negativeness until they reach basic neutrality, but they still try to attract more electrons, which end up going into orbits because now they become repelled from the core. That's the way it works. Alright, this is by Mars Moon Space TV, John Glenn Fireflies. Alright, listen to this.
They lit up like they're luminescent. I never saw anything like it. They're coming by the capsule. And they look like little stars, a whole shower of them coming by. They swirl around the capsule and go in front of the window, and they're all brilliantly lighted. They probably average maybe 7 or 8 feet apart, but I can see them all down below me also. Negative.
They asked him if they were impacting the capsule. Could he feel anything?
They're very slow. They're not going away from me more than maybe 3 or 4 miles per hour. They're going at the same speed I am, approximately. They're only very slightly under my speed. Over.
They can't hear him because he's in the ionosphere that is all electrons, which blocks his
They do have a
electronic
different motion,
signal.
though, from me, because they swirl around the capsule and then depart back the way that I am looking.
Now he's going to say it just started
Are you
happening.
receiving? Over.
They can't hear him again. He's going to say this happened as he was coming into sunrise or just coming out of sunrise or out of sunset.
Literally thousands of them. This is Friendship 7. Am I in contact with anyone? Over.
He's right in the middle of the static, and that's what I'm
This
saying.
has been going on since about 1+15. Over. Just after I remarked about the sunset, I looked back up and looked out the window, and all the little swirl of particles was going by. Over.
That's the smoker right there, just after sunset. This exact identical same thing happened in the tether incident, and those particles we can really see. Let's take a look at that. All right, so they're out here showing the tether, and they're saying, oh, how nice it is. Well, it's been really quiet because they don't know what to say, because they're seeing all these particles show up, and they're trying to dip in and out of the shot to try to get them out of there, and they can't do it. So listen to what happens here.
The satellite. Again, just moving into sunrise.
Just moving into sunrise. There you go. Now watch. Look at these
41
things.
nautical miles now from Columbia.
Look at these things. Those are light particles. Light does not travel at the speed of light. This is not correct. Some of them go fast, some of them go slow, some are drifting. They were with John Glenn just drifting around. They don't have any clue what to say now. They're just, watch, wait do you hear what he says now? I mean, you can see these things. All right, now, they're just coming into sunlight, and that's now they shut down the cameras to try to fix it. They can't fix it. They come back, and then they admit they can't fix it.
Getting the image?
Franklin, we see a long line, a couple of star-like things, and a lot of things swimming in the foreground. Can you describe what you're seeing?
Well, the long line is a tether, and there's a little bit of debris that kind of flies with us, and it's illuminated by the sun at such low angle. So there's a lot of stray light, and it's getting washed out quickly, but Claude is trying to do a good job here adjusting the cameras.
All right, well, Claude can't adjust the cameras out of there. There's nothing you can do. It has to come out of the sunlight. Here's what happens. As the space shuttle, or the whatever they were in, is coming into the sunlight, it's still in the darkness, and these are in the darkness. It's like in the penumbra, or whatever they call it. It's like in the shade. So they're being illuminated by the sun. He can see them, but as soon as he comes up into the sunlight, they wash out in the sunlight. And nobody can see anything because they're completely obscured. They're no longer in the darkness. That's why Rodney's pictures came out so well. He did them in a very darkened room. I mean, not black darkened, I don't think, but in a dark room. So these illuminate. Okay, this is sizing up top quarks' interaction with Higgs. And a proton collision experiment provides a new handle on Higgs boson interaction with heaviest of the quarks. Now, let's talk about these quarks. Well, let's just cut to the chase. Finding a top Higgs interaction strength that differs from the expected value could provide a clue. You saw that huge white interaction. I had no idea what that is. However, it is completely different from the other particles. Now, it says because of its huge mass, which obviously it has, the top quark's interaction with the Higgs boson, which we saw, the Higgs bosons, the Higgs fields. If you can come up with anything different, God bless you, was expected to be much stronger than that of the other quarks. That's exactly what we saw. So, all of this stuff fits so well. And nobody wants to have any interaction with me about it. Now, I looked into this one here. The physicists say they think there's a new particle. Well, they're coming up with new stuff every day, and I think they've been watching my videos, because my videos show that there is new stuff all over the place, and they're just leaving it laying there. Now, she says, this woman here, Janet Conrad, she says that they've noticed in the standard model things seem to come in threes. Now, that's why I saw that. There's some other things with threes that I understand a little bit, but I won't bother talking about. Now, because I don't have enough to say about it, but I do have a feeling that there are validity to that statement. There is validity there. Now, so there's three families of quarks, and they claim there's three, and the three leptons, and all this different business. Now, I contacted her to see if maybe she would take a look at this stuff. We'll find out. She's at MIT. This is her right here at MIT, and so we'll find out. It's summer, so maybe she won't be interested, but who knows? We'll find out. That's all we can do. So anyway, the place you want to go to is Mud Fossil University on YouTube, where everything you could ever want to know is there for you. 30,953 will be over 31,000 today. Now, everything here is free. Everything here is literally amazing. Amazing. About your health, about physics, about history, about giant human beings. There's dragons. There's no question they were here. There's absolutely no question. And it all shows you on videos in here. California is now teaching mud fossils. All right? And I have a PhD over in England. They'll be presenting mud fossils. Well, this is crazy. All right, here you have right here is Cherenkov radiation, and you have neutrinos, muon and electron shower, and that's what I'm showing is the electron shower, because we're working with electrons. When they come in at a high velocity and smash, you see this? They do just exactly what we see. They create these cones. Cherenkov radiation from the electron shower, which is exactly what I'm saying, is a high energized accelerated particle. Now, they're looking at these from nuclear particles stepping down into heavy water and things like that, into a lower medium. I'm saying I stepped it up and smashed it back into the normal medium. So they're saying Cherenkov radiation from the electron shower produced by an electron neutrino event produces multiple cones and therefore a diffuse ring in the detector array. I don't see any difference from what I'm showing. And that's what they say. Cherenkov, we saw it. Electron, I'm saying that's what it is. Accelerated, I said it did that. We saw the cones, we see them. Alright, this is Lathamman's crazy machines. I show this all the time. This is the core, and the core is not only positive, it's negative as well. So it fills up with all the electrons coating the positives until it reaches basic neutrality. Then it surrounds itself with electrons in the orbits, and you'll see this coming up right now. What happens is, you'll see it. There it is. This is how, that's quantum. And it's just not understood that they can do this. I don't think that, a lot of physicists, they need some toys to play with. Now, as he shakes it, that's heat. And when it escapes from his shaking, that is light or the conduction of electricity. It's just the way it is. Now, it's trying to stay there. It says, I don't want to go anywhere. And then it took off as light. As soon as it takes off and goes flying away, that is a particle of light. There it goes. That was light. So this is how the whole thing works as far as I'm concerned. Now, if somebody can come up with a better explanation for the things that I have shown the light looks like to me, it's doing all the things they were asking for a Higgs boson, neutrino, electron shower, right-hand rule. I mean, It's all there, and the ether is there, my friends. So it's time to pay attention to this. Go to Mud Fossil University. Okay, you can easily do this at home for very little money. All we used was a GLM 15 Bosch construction laser. It's a red pulse laser. Very inexpensive. And it shoots out the red pulses of laser, and through here we put a couple of construction nails. Now, just so you fully understand, Rodney Warren in Australia did this research, or he was just playing around trying to figure out what he could see in light, and he was actually thinking he saw some actual dimensional creatures in there, and he sent me all kinds of pictures, thousands of pictures really, and the ones I'm showing you are some of the ones he sent me. But these are the things he picked up in his light experiments, and he was doing through a slit containing two metal pins, which were construction nails, and those two metal pins forced with that curvature the light waves, which are like this, to restrict into a pinpoint, which forces them to accelerate. And there is no option whatsoever. They have to accelerate. Absolutely no option whatsoever. So they accelerate. And that is light accelerating. So I'm saying that Einstein was not correct. And when that light comes out of the Venturi, it collides with an unaccelerated region, and it atomizes, and it becomes plasma and chaos. And it just tries to get away from each other on as much extreme distance as it can put in. And as it gets away from here, the quantum distance just sort of separates, and it begins to break down into these disk forms, which are the Higgs fields. And they're headed by each one of the particles that come out of here. And then they slowly begin to reform, well, not slowly really, but pretty quick. They reform back into their spinning little red disks. All these pictures were taken with a cell phone. Simple, like iPhone. And this was 2-3 years ago, 3-4 years ago now. And I've lost touch with Rodney over the last couple of years, and I cannot reattach with him. So you're welcome to try this yourself. Just get one of these little lasers, get a couple pins, and do your slit experiments and see what you get. I've shown all the stuff, the patterns we got. Now, I did a bunch of them too, but I didn't have the time or the expertise Rodney had. So you're going to have to play around with it. Make sure you do it in the dark. Make sure you have a moist environment, because that'll really give you a lot of ether in the air, because those are the particles that attach to moisture molecules primarily. And then you'll see all the interference in the air. That's all I can tell you. And I had prisms. I tried all this stuff with prisms too, but there was no need to go too much further than what Rodney showed me. I mean, it's not. I can't see a human being on the face of this planet that can argue with any of that factually and say, "Oh, that means nothing. It means nothing." And that is what I'm getting. So I think it's time for somebody else to try to do this and to try to see if it can work. Nobody else apparently has tried. They thought it was impossible, so they never tried. Well, it's not impossible, and I have the evidence to show that it is not impossible, and this is all you need to show yourself. All right, so thank you.